Hi, I'm Kofi Opoku Ansah.
And I'm Daniel Mark Miller.
Welcome to the VFX Artist Podcast.
The podcast by artists
For artists,
with informative and inspirational interviews
to help you raise your game
and inspire the next generation of artists. Welcome to part 2 of our summary video, our recap of 2021. This was a video, podcast episode that was supposed to come out before Christmas, but unfortunately I got COVID and was out of action for a couple of weeks, so my apologies for that. There's some fantastic content in this episode, from filmmakers to previous artists to supervisors to VFX editors, all kind of really interesting people with all different kinds of insights in the industry. So check it out. There will also be links to the full episodes in the description, so please check those out too. And without further ado, sit back and let's get going. So we've now got Paris Marine, and so we were talking about previs and post-vis and what the difference is, if you don't know. So if you don't know, you will know. I was going to say if you don't know how you know, but you haven't listened to it, so, or maybe you have.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, did you know much about previs and post-vis before?
I mean, I've used previs and post, like we get previs and post-vis, and I know I have a couple of friends who've been doing post-vis stuff, but you know, there's always, you know, sitting down with someone for an hour and getting their side of the story is a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you get a lot deeper.
Yeah. So I met Paris working at the third floor. I was a matching artist, freelance matching artist at the third floor for post-vis. So I brought on Paris to explain the differences between previs and post-vis, because I don't think it's commonly known or understood in industry. I mean, at least for me anyway, I didn't know much about it when I got into that department.
Okay, so now you've interviewed this guy. What is the difference between previs and post-vis in 30 seconds or less?
Okay, so previs. You should listen to the episode. But I guess previs is the concept of like a storyboard in action. So you're literally building the director's vision into like a sort of a movie, like a very basic view of the movie, and then post-vis is literally once they've taken the previs, they go and shoot the film using like the camera angles and all of the information, and then they do the post-vis with the plates, and then on post-vis we integrate some sort of VFX. So we do like a 70% or 60% quality type VFX on the post-vis, so that the director can see how the shots are looking, or as well as to see if a shot is going to work when it gets to the VFX stage.
It's interesting because it does give you a very clear idea, right, of what you need to do. If you just get a plate with no post-vis, I mean, you just need someone to tell you what to do. But if you've got post-vis, you've got a very clear sense of direction. Unless, of course, they've really changed direction and they don't like what they did in the post-vis.
Paris explains it better than I do. So,
as a previs artist, you want to visualize the shots, right? So you take a complex scene and you take the storyboard or the animatic of that film, of that sequence, and you try to put it on the screen. You want to help the director visualize this stuff. So like an example, you have a Marvel movie and you have all these characters fighting, I don't know, on the ground, in the sky, and we're doing all this crazy stuff. It's a bit hard to go directly with the camera and start shooting this stuff, right? So you want to visualize as best as you can. So this is how previs is handy. You take those storyboards, and we as a previs company, we build the assets, and we try to animate, to block the animation. We use it as a layout. We'll try to make a composition to see how it look, you know, and then we'll try to sort out the action to see how this will work best, and you try to answer most of the questions from pre-production. You don't want to wait later on in production to realize, okay, this will not work, this is working, how should we change this? You're trying to do that from the beginning.
Yeah.
After the shooting, we tend most of the time to do the post-its for this. So we'll get all those plates, whatever they shoot, and we try to combine our PVs, our animation from previous shots with the post-its. We try to combine this, and that will be again passed further on for final pixel animation.
So, so that was episode 10, and then change of pace again. We've got. I think this is the first on the podcast. This is someone whose most of their work is on social media, right? This is Ty Robillard.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about this guy.
Yeah, Ty is interesting because he's I think he's only 17 and he's self-taught. He's currently a student. He just literally just started university, but his journey is quite interesting because he's self-taught. He uses Blender as a 3D software and After Effects for compositing.
Yeah,
it feels weird to use the term compositing for After Effects, but I guess
you can use After Effects for compositing. You can.
Yeah.
No, you can.
Yeah, but yeah, he's really cool.
Use Blender, actually, if you want.
Yeah, Blender's really cool 3D software.
But you can composite in Blender, you know.
All right, okay.
I mean, I don't know if you should. I don't know how good it is, but I think the movies they do for Blender, like the Blender Foundation, they comp in Blender as well.
Okay.
You can comp in Houdini as well. Like there's weird things you can comp in.
Yeah, but Ty loves his journey to pursue VFX was inspired by Star Wars, and he taught himself how to use Blender, and he recreated a few scenes from Star Wars that he'd seen, and he got in touch with me through coming across the podcast, and I just did some research and learned about what he does, and I thought, oh, this is quite cool because he's sort of the person that I was targeting the podcast for, so it's quite cool that he'd come across it and find it very interesting.
But he's really good. When you say he's 17, you're like, this is
as a 7, that's literally why I wanted to highlight his talent, because I think he's really good, and he's got a good what do you call it? Like he knows what he wants to do. He clearly knows what he wants to do,
and he's got good work ethic and a good eye.
That's it. And he's putting in all the work, and he's contacting the right people, and it's quite inspiring.
Cool. So let's hear a bit of Ty.
In 2020, which is now last year, I think at the very beginning of 2020, I saw, which was obviously, of course, at the beginning of all the lockdowns and everything. And I had so much time on my hands and just being at home. And I was like, hey, what better way to spend it? Like just actually practicing what I love to do. And of course, I practiced it, all the time anyway, arguably maybe even too much. But I just said, I'm just going to do this all day, every day now for lockdown. And it's going to be great and maybe make some money off of it too. So Matt Alonso, shout out to him. He posted a little advertisement, and keep in mind, I've been following him for years just because it's one of those. Eventually, it was one of those film. You know how it is on Instagram, all those film profiles and just follow.
Yeah, literally,
yeah, literally, but they're so fun. His work was fantastic, and I was always a fan of his stuff, and I've been aware of his resume, which is, I mean, just it speaks for itself. And so I just was a fan of his work for a while. And he posted at this time, hey, looking for a VFX artist, hit me up. Here's my information. And I just thought to myself, like, well, like should I reach out? Like I thought to myself, wait a minute, I am a VFX artist. That's what I consider myself. I don't know about anybody else, and I said, I don't think that this is a good idea because this guy is
a legend.
He's Matt Alonso. I said, I don't think that he's going to hire me. So I hesitated, and I shut off my phone and I thought about it. And I was actually working on a project, and it couldn't get out of my head. And I was like, no, I'm doing myself an injustice by not reaching out, because the worst thing that could happen would be he just either doesn't open it or he just says no. I don't know him personally. So at the time, and I said, I'm going to reach out. And I reached out, and he said, oh, thanks for reaching out. he sent me some files. He said, "Can you send me some samples?" I said, "Absolutely." And I finished that, and I was so excited to even go that far.
Yeah.
And on the spot, he said, "I love it. I want to hire you." And it was just, I mean, that was, like I said, a complete turning point, because I was able to produce at the times as 17 years old, I was able to help produce a major music video, some visuals for that, with like you said, an award-winning director who I never would have thought I would cross paths with.
Yeah.
So you can check out that's episode 10. No, that's episode 11, sorry, with Ty Robillard, and you can also follow him on Vimeo and find his showreel. Watch it yourself. And now we go to Rihanna, not the singer, Rihanna Charles, and Jodie Simone. So this is another first. We come from one first to another first. Two people in one episode. Rihanna Charles and Jodie Simone Howe, and costume and set designing. So this is actually really cool, because I mean, as a compositor, set design is something that you're interested in, because often we're changing it, or we're trying not to break it, or we're trying to fix it. So there's like three ways it could be. We're almost doing it. We're trying to fix it because it's broken, or we're trying not to break it because it looks great, and we just need to do our comp work and keep everything that they've done, which is so good. So anyway, let's hear a bit about all of them.
Rihanna and Jodie Simone. I think their industry is quite interesting, or at least I found it interesting, because I don't know much about it, and it was quite intriguing. So I wanted to find out, how they I don't know, they do all the costumes for the actors and actresses, and what goes into it. And I wanted to find out the difference between that and the fashion industry, as well as I was curious about how their journey into that industry or that sector works, because for us as artists, going to find work, we have to have a show reel, and we have to, at least at some point, there was a set steps of transitioning. So you have to be a runner and then transition into the departments that you had to go to. But then I found out through them that in their industry or in their sector, it's quite different. You don't really need, just like we don't really need like CVs anymore to get work in the industry. Like they don't really need showreels. So it's interesting to learn about what they do and their role, and
how they got into it as well. I mean, how they got started and how they got to where they are. So let's hear a bit of these, a bit of Rihanna and Jodie.
Basically, a costume has a journey throughout a show, and I work out what that journey is and how it gets from A to B. For example, if there's like a shooting or like a stunt in the show, and there's a progression of a costume getting broken down from start to end. Usually when you're filming, you know this as well, Kofi, you always film out of order. So we might go slap bang in the middle when the costume should be mid broken down. And it's my job to know when that happens. It's my job to also know that I need to have doubles, so that when we go back, that costume's fresh. Or if we jump forward, then it's the most broken down version we can have. And then my day-to-day would involve kind of documenting all of that continuity into some sort of Bible, we call it.
I'll go through costume design just because that's where I'm kind of maneuvering into a lot more at the moment. Usually you get sent a script by either the director or producer, and they kind of like, we would love to have you on board this project. Like, please have a look at the script, see if it's something that you're interested in. Once you've got the script, you kind of do like a script breakdown, kind of like have a read of it, kind of start to imagine what the characters are like, who these people are, and then visualize them. And then often you'll kind of create mood boards and send those through to the director. Sometimes the producers are involved in that as well. But then it's kind of a back and forth about and a meeting of minds for what to actually put on screen when it comes to the characters. That's kind of a vague kind of what you're doing as costume design. Sometimes you do costume illustration, as well when it comes to the prep and the beginning of it. But currently, as I said, I'm working as an assistant costume designer on a project with an amazing costume designer called Ruka Johnson, who was the costume designer for Rocks, which I don't know if you've seen, but it was amazing.
This is a long episode, this next one, but it's really cool. It's almost, to me, this was, when I listened to this, I thought this was like 2 bits of content. This is with Simon Legrand. It's episode 13. And so in one aspect, it's talking about, you know, working as an artist in a lot of studios. But then there's also some really cool stuff, and I think it's about halfway in, about real time, an Unreal Engine, and using that in a studio, and why it's not super simple to get it in a pipeline, but how he's doing that at Untold Studios. So Simon Legrand, tell us a bit about how you met Simon and how you got him involved. What you took away from this one.
Simon. So Simon discovered Ace's podcast because they're connected, and then I reached out. I connected with Simon because I don't know, for some reason he found Ace's episode to be really, really cool. And then when I came to learn about what's
because it is really cool, that's why.
When I came to learn about what Simon does as a real-time supervisor, I didn't have anyone on the podcast that did real-time. I mean, so I had Simon on, and his journey was really cool because he's worked at some of the amazing studios that almost everyone wants to work at or for. But then also, interestingly, he's a real-time supervisor at Untold, and then he was kind of like telling me, or sort of, what's the word? So, because lately Unreal has become quite the buzz.
And like
a lot of people, a lot of people are doing it. But what's interesting is that Simon was like, everyone uses Unreal in the wrong way, or somehow. Because he was saying it feels like it's easy to use Unreal, but most of the times people or artists are just using the presets, and they don't really understand what goes behind, or like how things work, and as well as his experience with having Unreal freelancers at his studio, that sometimes like some people might have amazing short films done in Unreal, but when they have to translate that into working in a studio, it's difficult for them to translate it because they haven't understood the full scale of how things work. But aside from that, that episode was really cool because his journey and his story is amazing. And then I learned about how Untold Studios is using Unreal to help their clients and wanted to bring their ideas to life. And what did you think about that?
I thought it was really good because the challenges as well. Like, one of the things about Unreal is you've got all these mega scans, and you have got some stuff that looks really good out of the box, right? But again, like, it looks a certain way, and I guess once you're familiar with that, it all looks that way. So making something specific to a brief is a bit more challenging, and I think he really breaks down that and takes you a bit away from the buzz and gives you a good grounding in where they are. So I would, if you're interested in Unreal, if you're interested in just your general career advice, I think I would just listen to the whole thing. And if you're just interested in Unreal, I think you can sort of go to the halfway point and just like get all the information about Unreal. I think it's a brilliant one. So that is episode 13. Let's hear a bit of that.
You can't treat real time like you treat an old school VFX pipeline. The data management isn't the same. You can't reference files off disk. It has to go through this conversion process to turn into a UI set to live inside the project directory of the engine. So because of that, there's the workflow is different, and you need to treat it differently, which is kind of a tough nut to crack, because ideally you want someone that works in the VFX side of things to be able to just jump onto an Unreal job and feel at home and work like they usually work. But on the other side, you have to remember that, like, you know, a very good example is that in Nuke or Houdini, if you want to try 3 different textures, you just import all 3 and then you just plug them and just like switch between the 3, and you go like, which one's best, you know? If you do that with Unreal, you're going to go through, you know, a whole import process, which is much slower than referencing from disk. Then you're creating IO, which, you know, you have to be careful in big pipelines when a lot of people are working. IO is a dangerous thing to bottleneck. And so you're creating a lot more IO. And then on top of that, you're just putting so much useless data in the project cache. So like, while you're working, every time you import a texture, Unreal compresses that information, puts it in a cache somewhere to remember it. And it doesn't really link back to the JPEG or the EXR that you had on disk. So that cache, when you delete that texture, that cache stays, because Unreal doesn't know that you've deleted that texture. It doesn't care. It just keeps the cache. So you have this massive cache that starts building and building and building. And then suddenly everyone's cloud machines are like running out of space because of all that crazy useless information that's being built in. So to change the workflow, you can't really just tell the artist like, this is how it works, because most artists, they just want to do their work. And if they want to check 3 textures, they want to find a way to check 3 textures easily. So you have to start building tools that behave like what they are used to, but behind the scenes kind of does something else.
And then I joined you. So I was a fan. I was following the podcast because it was similar way to how you met with Ace. Like I was seeing that people I was listening to, I think, well, actually I connected with Ace, so I saw his episode come up and just followed the podcast because I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was something that I'd wanted to do and never done. And you'd done it, and you'd put the work in and got all these great people on. So I was really impressed. And then, then you asked me, I think.
No, well, because right from the beginning of when I started the podcast, you were really like helpful. Like you were so kind with giving me feedback, and you were always so honest with your feedbacks, and I really appreciated them, because like doing podcasts is like my first time, and I had no idea about how to. And
although it was kind, it was actually a lot easier to give the feedback than to actually do it. I found when I started, it is really difficult. Like, I mean, it's not like, you know, like launching a rocket to Mars, but there are a lot of pitfalls, especially if you're just used to looking at pictures and suddenly you're dealing with a medium that we do have pictures, but it's really all about sound, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I asked you, when my newborn, my second child son, was born earlier in September, and like, I was gonna put the podcast on hold for like a few weeks or a month or so, until I settled back again. But then I just you came into my mind, and I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to have you on board, and then have you, because you have your own contacts, and it'll be quite cool to have a diverse what do you call it?
A range of people. And I guess even
range,
like different hosts.
That's it.
And it does mean we can be a bit more regular, right? Like, because we're still turning them around in a couple of weeks, because we have other jobs and we both have families and things. So, you know, do an interview and then probably edit it the following weekend. But although there's that 2-week cycle, it's kind of staggered, right? So I'm doing one and you're doing another. In this case, obviously we've got you had a bit of a backlog of episodes prepared, so which is why there's still a few more coming out. But I think more often it will become a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, or whatever.
That's it.
And a few more things like this maybe or
Yeah,
some other
exactly,
formats. And we'd love to hear other formats that people are interested in, right? Like there are little short formats, or we're thinking of like some roundtable type things. So
yeah,
that would be cool. So this was this guy is actually really interesting. So I worked with Chaos Group quite a lot. One was I was at a studio and I was trying to persuade the small studio to buy some V-Ray licenses because they had some very old ones. So Alex at the Chaos Group just really helped sort me out, and they all were really patient. But moving on from there, I have been doing a short film, and so I've been in contact with Chaos Group. They actually sponsored it a little bit. So we've done a promo, a little commercial for the short film, and we did that using V-Ray, which they gave us licenses for, and using the render farm Chaos Cloud, which they gave us a license for. So I thought of interviewing one of the artists there, and I asked Alex, and he was like, "Well, I'm not really an artist. I'm not the person you want to speak to, but I know who is." And this guy, Chris Nichols, is brilliant. He's a VFX supervisor, so he's worked in the industry from early days. We're talking about stuff like Day After Tomorrow, kind of stuff, Tron Legacy, you know. So he knows V-Ray very well. I think he literally, one of the first things is I've been working with V-Ray since before it was a product. So when it was just like a little, you know, when it was just Vlad doing his thing. And he's also now working with their real time, so that means V-Ray in Unreal. So it's not really competing with Unreal. There is a V-Ray for Unreal, but also this thing called Vantage, which hasn't got as much buzz as I think it probably deserves, because it's really interesting because it's fully real time ray tracing, and you can bring in a VR scene. So if you're using V-Ray on any platform, you can export your thing as a VR scene, and perhaps in future it will bring in USD as well, and I think that would make it blow up. So dealing with real time, and he also did this promo for V-Ray years ago, like 10 years ago, which was hilarious. And it's like, well, they talk about the features, but like while they're robbing a bank. And I remember that blowing up at the time and being really funny. So I thought this was a really good chance to catch up with him. And of course we both went on his podcast too. Right? So that was a cool one.
I thought Chris was really, his journey was cool. It's really cool. It's quite inspiring how he's still doing the podcast like after so many years, and his journey is really interesting because he was an artist in the architecture visualization industry, and then he switched to VFX, which is really interesting. And cool.
I mean there's a lot of those like switches, and then switching again, right, to working on with a vendor, essentially with a software vendor that he'd had a relationship with as a supervisor. So there's some cool stuff there.
Because Vlado and I have been talking about this for years. It's like, yes, rasterized, real-time rendering is going to replace offline rendering eventually, but rasterized rendering is not going to replace ray tracing. And everyone keeps talking about how, oh yeah, Unreal's so much better. It's like Unreal is a rasterizer still. Even Unreal 5 is a rasterizer, right? What Unreal 5 is doing is what RenderMan did back during WALL-E, right? All those, so it's good. It's really good for real time, but it's not ray tracing. And what you want ultimately is full ray tracing. So eventually maybe RenderMan, Unreal is going to go full ray tracing. But right now, if I want full ray tracing in real time, my only option is Vantage, right?
So when will Vantage be?
It is.
Commercial
you can use it right now.
Can...
You can use it right now. So it's the cool thing is what I'm doing, what I'm taking advantage of in Vantage is what we're trying to get working is something called live linking, which is available in Max and Maya, and it's not available yet for Unreal because I'm sort of trying that thing out right now. But what it's live linking is it takes let's say you're in Maya and you have your scene in Maya and you have V-Ray for Maya ready. You use live linking, and what it does is when you hit live linking, it'll take whatever you have in Maya and live render it in Vantage, so you can see it in real-time ray tracing that way.
So we're on a bit of an Unreal and real-time kind of role now, because you've got an Unreal supervisor again, with Floyd Billier. So, and he also, you saw a LinkedIn post that he did.
So one of my contacts told me about him. So my mate Jermaine Rajes, he sent me a post linked to Floyd's original post, which was Floyd discussing how a black student or a black person contacted him, asking him for advice about how it is working in the industry as a person of color, and then Floyd was just literally talking about how he feels. He was saying a bit about how he can help a bit more, and he was quite inspired or touched by the person that had contacted him, and he felt he wasn't doing enough, and he wished he can do enough. So he was reaching out to people in a way so that he can be more of a service to the community. So that's how I came across Floyd, and then I decided to bring him on because he was like the first black supervisor, or at least that I know of, or I've come across.
I mean, that's interesting. So how have you found it, like yourself, just out of curiosity?
I mean, his story is quite common to me because I move around a lot. I mean, like I'd say in the studios I've worked in since being a junior or runner, I've always been either the only black person or one of two or one of a few, and it seems to be quite common.
It's true. I find even when I would commute in, I mean, now I've been working from home for so long, it feels like forever, but I'd find that as I got on the bus sort of in South London and got to the end of my commute, like the end of my commute was a lot whiter than the beginning of my commute. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but so it's very true. And why do you think that is? I mean, there's some demographic issues, but I mean at the same time, like it seems less than the number of people there are in London, for example. We were talking about that. So I think it's based on a lot of different factors, and I mean, firstly, because I mean, for some of it could be because, like as Floyd was saying, the ratio of black students coming out of a course like of a degree and then pursuing that industry or actually finishing that degree cuts off, because sometimes we don't graduate and then pursue it, or there's lack of knowledge of these departments in the get-go, because I mean, as speaking for myself, I'm African, and I know certainly that the African community tend not to like respect or appreciate the artist, the art or creative industry. So that's part of the problem, because we don't encourage it. So although, I mean, I think there's an element of that in the white community as well, right? Like if you say you want to be like a VFX artist, people say like, well, what do you really want to do? I think that's not a black thing. Like to me, it might be more intent. I mean, I guess if you're, perhaps if you're like from a more working class background, or like it might be intensified, and maybe there are factors as well. I mean, Prince on the interview said his family wanted him to be an electrician, right? Like, so I guess I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just wondering if there's anything like, do you think that's like because that's sort of putting all the blame, kind of not all the blame, but the responsibility purely on the black community at this point, and I don't know if that's entirely
I mean,
true.
I don't think it's got to do with any biases in the industry, because from my experience, that everyone that I've interacted with in the industry have been as like really cool to get on with, and everyone's really kind and really friendly. So yeah, there just might not be enough people taking.
I think there's also an element of connections, right? Like, I mean, you say that, but I don't think it was always that way. And I know people my age that have had some really horrible experiences, genuinely quite horrific. And if those people, maybe that's 10, 15 years ago, but if those people in the industry, if there was this sort of level of prejudice there, then it's going to take a while to go away, because what happens is they bring in all white people, or they tend to not bring in black people, or not bring them forward, bring them bring them up through the industry. And the few people that are there are then under this pressure of if they're good or bad, they're representing black people. Because if you're the only black artist, if you're not good, it's you're now all black people are bad, right? That's the thing. That's not the case with a white artist. They could be terrible, but because all the other artists are white as well, no one, it doesn't reflect on the white community to the same extent. But I feel if there was this, when you have this backlog of prejudice and then you have these people around, then their connections, people just won't have those connections, right? From the past, and it will take almost another generation to get rid of. That's the thing. These things will take longer. The actual results of prejudice will last longer than the prejudice itself in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done, but yeah. I mean, I think a lot needs to, in terms of education wise, in terms of making people aware of it, which is what I try to do sometimes as well, going back into my old college and just literally showing the students what I do and what I've been up to, and speaking to them and then just
and also, I mean, just to put a bit of clarity on this, Floyd's interview is actually really good on real time and Unreal and and the game industry and the connection to the game industry and the film industry. So his path, so there obviously you touch on this issue. You touched on them with Ace, you touched on them with Prince, you touched on them with other artists that you've interviewed. But one thing I want to say is actually a really epic Unreal real time episode, because one of the really fascinating things about his journey to supervisor is that because he was from the game industry, he had real time experience way more than any of the other artists. And I think that's quite an interesting, because this is the first time when people have, normally being in the game industry would be a drawback if you're trying to get into film, right? And at this point in time, because of how Unreal is blowing up in film, it's actually a really good time. If you're in the game industry now and you're thinking, I'd like to do film, it's the time to do it. I think it's the time, right? So let's hear a bit of Floyd.
What can be done in pre-rendered cinematics and what can be done in games is getting closer and is smaller and smaller all the time as graphics cards get more powerful and as tech gets more powerful. That gap is just closing, and I think we're getting to a place where studios are really starting to recognize this. The team over at Unreal has recognized this a good while ago, and that's their aim, I think, is to just create this tool that can replace what people are doing with pre-rendering. I mean, you can still, to some degree, pre-render out of Unreal, so you can render from it. But I guess the only setbacks at the moment are that mesh complexity and things like translucency and transparency and all of that stuff that requires really complex rendering is still going to be done in pre-rendered high-end studios. As soon as Unreal manages to completely close that gap, I don't see why people won't completely be using it. I think Unreal 5, what we can see from it so far, they're already closing that gap. In terms of mesh complexity, they seem to be solving that already. You can have hundreds and thousands of polygons on a mesh now. And that wasn't possible in Unreal 4, not in the way that you can have crazy displacement on a wall in pre-rendered projects. And that's something that I learned moving into pre-rendered when I went to Axis, was just whoa, you guys just just press the buttons and then the polys just go high. Like you put a displacement map or a height map on there and have it tessellate like 6 or 7 times in a scene, and everyone's okay with that. That's fine because it looks awesome. I see that there maybe aren't enough Black kids coming up from school going into college for this industry. And then because the numbers of kids that go to university in the courses drops by, I mean, once in the first year there's like say 80 people, in the second year there's like 40 people, and then in the last year only like 30 of them graduate, right? So if at the beginning you only get 3 Black students in, by the time people come out, you will be lucky if there's one that gets through. And I don't know if it's just that this industry is never taken seriously in the Black community, or it's not taken seriously, but that just it's not an option. I feel like I only wanted to do this because of my own want to do this. It was never advertised to me as something I could do or something I should want to do. And I think that's something that maybe we need to do more. I think all I knew is when I was growing up, and all my friends knew when we were growing up, was that we didn't want to work a regular 9 to 5. And this industry has enabled me to do that. Sure, I work 9 to 5. I do art all day, every day. I mean, pretty much everyone works a 9 to 5 that's not a millionaire. Like there's a period of time you're going to need to sit down and do your work. It's whether you enjoy doing that work or not that it makes the difference, right? And I 90% of the days, maybe 95% of the days, enjoy doing what I'm doing and love doing what I'm doing. But I think we just need to advertise more that this is a completely viable option, and not just a viable option, but a really fruitful one. And one that creates massive opportunities. Like I've not had to struggle for many years of my life. Like when I was at university, my card got declined at McDonald's. Like that was how I lived.
No,
but like that's not life anymore. And that's I owe that all to my own dedication, sure, and the fact that I love doing what I do, but to the industry enabling me at every step of the way to be able to do what I love doing.
This is the second one I did.
Episode 16.
Episode 16.
So it was quite interesting because I think Christy was saying that your first encounter was that you were her client.
Well, not quite. So I actually got invited through another friend, Sandra Roach, who's a composer. She invited me to this focus group where they were talking about launching. I think at the time it was like what became Nuke Indie. So the idea that, you know, because Nuke is really expensive. Right? If you try and buy it for yourself, it's actually a lot of money. So they were saying, how can we make a version that we sell at a cheaper price point, that we take away some features, so it's cheap enough that artists can buy it for themselves, but we don't want the studios to feel like they're being ripped off. So we need to remove some features. And Houdini, for example, has exactly this. Right? If you look at side effects, you can get Houdini Indie. So I think they were the first to do it, and now Maya has a version. So it's now become quite a standard thing. So they were just doing like a focus group about that, and of course, you know, that I sort of see why they want to take it out, all features, but of course we want all the features because we do. Like, and we don't want to pay for that, like lots of money. And so we had this like discussion, and I just thought it was good to follow that up. Also, I've been in touch with Christy. Similar thing of trying to negotiate new licenses at a smaller studio that I was working at. And we were round the corner and we went to some of the Foundry parties as well, which are really, really were really fun. Like we had one, I think it was Radiant paid for all the drinks, and they had all these cocktails. They had like a Wheel of Fortune with all these different like Swedish. They were all Swedish for some reason. The cocktails, crazy Swedish names, and no one knew what they were. And yeah, that was a big night out. But so anyway, we got in touch. We didn't talk about parties or any of these things. We actually talked about her career, which I thought was interesting because it's product development, so it's a little bit different. And we talked about the actual softwares themselves. So Nuke, obviously, I talk a lot about Nuke. I've got to say, it's a little bit Nuke biased. I did get a feedback from someone who was a Modo artist who was like, I wish you talked a bit more about Modo. And I will say, we might do in the future, but I use Nuke every day, and I've used it for quite a few years, so I do talk a lot about Nuke. So if you're interested in Nuke, this is definitely good. But we don't just talk about Nuke. We talk about machine learning in general. We talk about Katana. We talk about how this software is being used in other industries as well. So, for example, Modo is used in product development, which I didn't really know much about at all. People are using it to present products, and then they're using even Nuke is being used for like car, like you can spec up a car, like I want, these custom hubcaps or whatever. So there's some interesting things of people using this VFX software outside of VFX. But they're also talking about how, if you're an artist and you're interested in working for a software vendor, how you can do that, because there's a sort of art to developing software and deciding what features to develop and what not to develop. And then of course we talk about the buzzwords like machine learning is a big thing. We touch on real time. We talk about USD, which I think is really it's like I realised we never really explained what USD is, but basically it's interchange. So our whole industry is all different softwares, and definitely when I started, it was always a nightmare to take something from like PFTrack to Maya, from Maya to Nuke. Every time there was a bit of a faff, and it's got easier with Alembic. It's all kind of like now it all just works a lot better. Although there's still things like like different scales. Houdini's in meters and Maya's in centimeters and stuff like that. But generally everything is pretty standard, and USD is doing the same thing but with lighting and shaders and textures, so you can take a scene into a different renderer, so and take it into Nuke in the new version of Nuke. So there's some really interesting stuff with that, and it's not a Foundry product, it's general software. Everything is going to have some level of USD. Houdini is doing it in Solaris, so I thought that was quite an interesting topic that we touch on.
At the end, right, everything is going to come into Nuke, right, for a comp. And of course, like when it comes to interop, already from Nuke, we have to think about all the different inputs that you're going to bring in, whether it's camera plates, EXRs, Alembics, USD scenes now, all that has to come into Nuke. And we are seeing Nuke show up much earlier in the process, where it's being used as that reference point from the beginning of the how do we plan how we want this to end up in the end, see it in the context of Nuke, and then go off, work in all these other applications, render, and then you're going to come back to Nuke in the end. And I think that creates a lot of really interesting opportunities for interop. And obviously it's also the promise of USD, right, that you'll be able to go backwards and forwards and maintain a sense of versioning and control and non-destructive changes within a scene, thanks to that. When you think about the work that product management does, I guess it's probably interesting because a lot of your audience probably doesn't know what product management does, other than they're people that come and present roadmaps at your studio of what's coming next. So really, the way I see the role of product is matching, bringing in the voice of the customer and matching that to the business goals and working out the strategy for the product, but then taking that strategy and really being the one that's working towards delivery. So of course that's working really closely in partnership with engineering, the people that are actually writing code and doing the development of the software, but really with any team that's involved with delivery. So DevOps and business systems and sales and marketing and customer support and everything else, right? Whatever you need, that voice of the customer and that sense of priority. So in that sense, it's quite broad and quite exciting, the role.
And then and now we're like back to you. You've got a couple of episodes, which I think you'd recorded before, but this one came out a little bit early because the film's coming out. So tell us about that. This is Marcus Fleming's.
Yeah. So Marcus, his film actually came out on November 30th, which is called Blonde Purple. But I was curious about just journey and the life of indie filmmakers, just because I think I actually have like a short film that I may want to direct maybe in the new year. Because I remember Chris asking me in his episode when he interviewed us, and I said no, I don't have any film ideas. But then I realized I'd had like a script, an idea in my notes for like 2 years. Cool. That I want to develop. So yeah, this made me want to learn a bit more about just indie filmmakers and then how they are surviving in this era of like there's so much content being made left everywhere, and as well as if you look at Netflix, even like for what we do, we're always working on like TV episodics are just literally outpacing feature films, I think. And the demand is just incredible. So I was curious to find out about how they are surviving in this day and age, and how they're being keeping relevant and being original, and how they are taking in everything that's going on with content.
It's a really cool interview actually, because again, it's one of these ones where it's not strictly VFX, but of course we all work in the film industry. I mean, the VFX is for film and TV, so it's interesting how filmmakers become directors, how directors raise money for films. So if you're interested in financing a project, which I actually am trying to do as well, so I was like, take notes. So this is all gold for that kind of stuff. And his film Blonde Purple is out, and that's where is that available?
That's on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, and then Vudu, and then apparently he said it's on the Xbox as well. So I
didn't even know you could get that stream films on the Xbox. But
So I was surprised.
So that was a cool one. How did you get in touch though?
With Marcus. So Marcus is connected to Hader. Hader basically came across my podcast because he interesting. So Hader had been listening to CG Chris's episodes.
So who is Hader? What is he?
So Hader is a cinematographer. So he's a cinematographer and
I do know that from the podcast, but I thought I mean, people might be listening after, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So Hader, he's a cinematographer, and he's worked with Marcus on a few projects, and so then when he came across my podcast, he showed me, he sent me a link to Marcus's trailer, which was coming up. And I thought that was quite cool, because I thought the trailer was really nice, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. And he was from the UK, and so that's the connection between them, and that's why I brought.
That's cool. And what's funny actually at the end, he doesn't know much about like what you do, and then I thought was interesting was that we both have this mutual kind of respect, or like awe, like in a way, because from my point of view, it's like I'm so impressed because you're a director of feature films, and then at the same time, you saw that when he said you just worked on Eternals, he's like just blown away by like the level of projects you're working on. So there's these two different approaches, right, where you have these very small films, these independent films, and but you are you have this sort of full creative control, and then these projects where you're part of something much bigger than what you could do on your own. But everyone knows them. Everyone knows the name of this project, and it's part of the zeitgeist of our time. So I thought that was quite a sweet little touch at the end. That he was like, oh wow, like why are you asking me questions? That was pretty cool. But so let's check out a bit of that.
I would say that having good connections will definitely help you. Thankfully, on these films, I've almost self-financed the past two, so it's been quite fortunate in that sense. But definitely having good connections will help you sometimes. I think on the first film we made, me and Hader had a lot of wonderful connections with, I think, 3 or 4 investors, which they all put money into the film, which really helps. And Hader's really good at kind of, and you know, you've met him, so or you've spoken to him, so you know he's very personable, and you know he's very passionate about film, and that comes across as soon as you meet him. That comes across, and that's how he's managed to get people on his side over the years. And I think it's really important to keep those key relationships going, because you know they may not invest the first time, they may not invest the second time, but somewhere down the line they may invest, or they may just pay to watch your film. You know, if they like you, they may pay to watch your film, which is an investment in itself. So keeping key relationships is really, really important. And it's good to keep those relationships going. So if you do work with an investor, make sure they get their money back before you start going out and spending your money.
Right.
Make sure they get all their money back. We did that with Conversations. You know, we made a little bit of money from the film and we just gave it straight back. Any money that we've made, we've given it straight back to the investors. With distributors and sales agents and stuff, that is, again, keeping relationships, but you have to keep in mind that, you know, for this film, I've now established a relationship with one distributor. On the next film I make, maybe it's with another distributor. So, you know, it really varies, but you should always keep relationships in the industry really tight, because it's a very small industry and people think it's this vast, wide thing. There's different levels, you know, there's the Hollywood level, and there's the independent budget level, and there's a really low end, and everyone knows each other. Until you get to the Hollywood stage, everyone knows each other. So, you know, if you mess someone over, if you're not delivering, if you're rude to someone, someone's going to find out somewhere. So, keeping relationships is really key, and just, you know, I think you mentioned the word vision, making sure that your vision is always communicated to everyone that you work with.
And then, so check out the interview with Marcus Flemings if you're interested in that. You can also check out the film. And then the last one, now, we're actually recording this before you've released this, so I don't actually know who the next one is. Episode 18 is the last, is the penultimate episode of 2021. And this is the last episode of 2021. So we're in some quite cool territory here. So tell us a bit about...
So, episode 18. Yeah, it's going to be with a guy called Beaumont Lorenzo, and he's a VFX editor at Lucasfilm. So it was quite interesting, because my understanding with VFX editors was that I had the impression that they cut and they edit the film, but through that podcast I learned about the differences between them, and yeah, it's quite interesting, because everyone that just assumes being an editor is your role is just to cut and edit, but there's a few variations and roles. So yeah, it'll be interesting to actually listen to it. And yeah, it's interesting because he's been working on Andor for which is coming out soon. So yeah, we talk about that as well.
So now I'll mention those ones first. So I started, as I said, Fantastic Beasts. Then I moved on to Maleficent 2. Then I moved on to Venom 2. And now I've on to the new Star Wars show, Andor. As a VFX editor, you are expected to be able to provide a vision of what the shot's going to look like, so the editor and the director and whoever else can see it. So we'll be temping in, you know, quite rough comps of, you know, filling green screens with backgrounds, or painting out objects that shouldn't be there, or sometimes even comping in, like, you know, there's a lot of spaceships going on this now because we're in Star Wars land right now. So there's a lot of that. Lasers, we're doing loads of lasers. There's a lot of that. So yeah, we're expected to do a lot of that. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. There's a big long list of things that we have to do. Other than that, we could be turning over visual effects shots over to you guys through visual effects production, who distribute out to the vendors. There's a lot of that, and you know, if you think about it, average movie, big budget movie, has got, I don't know, 2,500 shots. We're the ones getting those frames out the door, and we're definitely having to deal with changes. So cuts are always changing, things are getting extended out of handles. We have to we're responsible to track and figure out when a shot's been extended, because we don't always know. Like, you know, some editors, they won't tell you. You have to look through, you have to find it. You have to look through the reels and find it. And we have different tools. You know, a lot of editors usually have their own database, either using FileMaker or Shotgun's a popular one used on like a browser-based one. So yeah, that's a big part of it, just finding what's changed, keeping up to date, so you guys are kind of working on the most up-to-date version of the cut.
So that's 2021. Have a great Christmas, New Year, holidays, other celebrations, and we're going to see you in 2022. So we've got a lot more coming. We're not going away. We're not going anywhere. We've got a lot of plans.
So what's our wish list for the new year?
Well, that's a good question.
Who would you like to be on?
Well, I definitely want to get a producer. I've been speaking to a couple of producers, and I think that's good. I think it's always good to have supervisors. I think we want to hear. There's a couple of supervisors from different kinds of angles of that. I think I would like to do some deep dives, like where I speak to people. So you speak to match movers, and we speak to people, and we just go like really like geeky and really down and dirty with stuff that maybe is not as much for like people new to the industry, but more just like let's get hardcore on stuff.
Definitely.
But I think we want to try some other formats too. Like we talked about like doing like a. And if anyone's interested in getting involved in this, we're talking, I think of doing like We Ask 10, and we're going to ask 10 artists about a topic related to VFX and get them all on and cut them together in like a cool and funky way. So there's that. I don't know. What's your wish list?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to have some more episodes where we have very deep dive episodes. But I also want to bring on some more female artists, and just because I think I think so far our podcast, our episodes have been predominantly male dominated, but I think definitely we want to get a bit more of that perspective. And I've been speaking to a few people as well I want to try and get on, and also because they're brilliant artists. So I think that's the thing. I think what's good is we're bringing diversity in from the beginning, but it's never like, you know, I think there's nothing worse than when they say we're going to do diversity and they have like a diversity panel, and that's what they talk about, and then it's like, but you know, I think what's good is everyone is there, you know, because of like how damn good they are at what they do, and how interesting their story is. First and foremost, so I think I think we're doing diversity the right way. I hope so. I don't know. And we'll get better. Like, tell us if we're not. Like, if you want to improve things in any way. Anyway, that's my thought. What do you think? And then of course we want everyone listening, right? Like, we want more people. Of course. So share the love. You know, I know there are a lot of podcasts now. There used to be like 1 or 2 podcasts, I think. I've come across a few now. Now there are quite a lot going, but I don't think they're rivals. I think it means as a market, it means people like wanna. I mean, and Chris was saying this to us as well, like about CG Garage and why we went on both of them, and you know, then I got to talk about this on another podcast as well, the On Track to Power, with Gregory Stapleton, and he's also talked to some cool artists. So there's a bit of crossover, I think, with the other podcasts that are out there, and hopefully, you know, there'll be a bit of a community. I hope to build more than like, you know, I mean, this is not our job, like it's not our source of income, so to speak. So we are. I think the thing about we are artists. We are working as VFX artists. We're not like ex VFX artists from back in the day who like talk about stuff or dropped it all to do a YouTube channel. You know. I don't know. What do you have any thoughts for 2022? Do you have any like things you want to reveal from the game plan? I mean, I guess people just have to follow the journey, but I think the upcoming episodes will be quite detailed and much more in depth, I think.
Yeah, not to say we haven't got in depth on the ones we've done. I mean, I think there's always that balance, because you do want people to be able to listen if they're not in the industry, but also if they're in a different bit of the industry. I think that's important too.
Yeah.
Because I think that's actually sometimes the most important. I think it's good that compositors learn what writers do and what animators do. We haven't an animator.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. You actually just reminded me.
We have a couple of animators we've been speaking. We have a few people we've been speaking to. To chase up.
Yep.
And I think would also be good to speak to a recruiter. I think that.
Oh yeah, of course. I had thought about it as well. Yeah.
Because you want to hear the opposite perspective when people are talking about sending their reels or promoting themselves and how to do that and how not to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen some funny things. I saw someone that spelt they applied for a role as a producer at a company I was working at, and they actually spelt the name of the company wrong. And then in the same letter, they spoke about how they had this great attention to detail. And it's like, or the other one, the classic one, is like they've copy pasted the letter, but they've left the name of the other studio.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, I know.
I mean, it's not rocket science sometimes, but I mean, other stuff is maybe. So I think it'd be good to hear like a perspective from someone that does that for a living.
Definitely, yeah.
Cool. Right. Well, we'll sign off. We'll see you next week. You've obviously got a lot of listening. If you haven't heard all the episodes now, you have to download them all. So, but they're on YouTube, Spotify, Google Play, iPlayer, other podcasting platforms.
Yeah. Or you can find them on the website as well.
I'm using Player FM. I don't know if you use that one.
I haven't been on it. I usually either use Spotify or. Oh, I mean, now that we have the website, it's easier for me, so I go on the website.
The website is the place to be, really. That's where all the cool kids are.
Yep.
Nice one. Okay, so we'll be seeing you all soon. So it's goodbye from me.
Yeah, it's goodbye from me. Yeah, and thank you so much for all your support and thank you for everything that. All your time and support with our podcast so far.
Thank you so much to audience and guests.
Ciao.